In today's podcast, I'll look at the songs that have the Bedlam asylum as its main location. I will examine the background of the songs and look at the printing history. I'll sing samples of the songs and end on a full performance. Abroad as I was walking one evening in the spring, I heard a maid in Bedlam so sweetly for to sing. Her chain she rattled with her hands, and thus replied she, I love my love, because I know my love loves me. Oh, my cruel parents have been to me unkind. They drove and they banished me and tortured my mind. Although I'm ruined for his sake, contented will I be. I love my love, because I know my love loves me. That tune and words for that version of The Maid in Bedlam was noted down by E. Quintrell in May 1905 from J. Bowden of Kirtley Cross near Helston in Cornwall. When we refer to Bedlam, we're talking about the Bethlehem Royal Hospital, which originally stood at Bishopsgate in London. In 1676 it was moved to Moorfields and later, in 1815, to St George's Field in Southwark in London. From the 15th century, the hospital was noted for its specialisation in the care and confinement of the mentally insane. The hospital was originally restricted to male patients. Female patients were dealt with in St Magdalen Hospital. The move to Moorfields was to a bigger hospital, which housed both male and female patients. Just when the name was shortened to Bedlam is not known, but the noise and shouting and confusion of its inmates gave rise to the word Bedlam to mean uncontrollable noise and action. Bethlehem Hospital became a popular place to visit to observe the inmates. It was free to enter the hospital, and it provided an amusement for the visitors to view the lunatics and their antics. The hospital was portrayed in a number of popular plays in the early 1600s, including The Duchess of Malfi and Bartholomew Fair. There were several street ballads written in that period that included references to Bedlam. Many are political commentaries. There are at least 4 tunes with the title of Tom of Bedlam. The ballad was lost from general singing until it was revived by Steel Eye Span in the 1970s, using the text and variation of the tune published as a broadside street song, and later included in 1793 in Pills to Purge Melancholy under the title of Mad Maudlin to Find Out Tom of Bedlam. To find my Tom of Bedlam, 10,000 years I'll travel. Mad Maudlin goes with dirty toes to save her shoes from gravel. Yet I will sing, bonny boys, bonny mad boys. Bedlam boys are bonny. They still go bare and they live by the air, and want no drink nor money. I now repent that ever poor Tom was so disdained. My wits are lost since him I crossed, which makes me go thus chained. Yet will I sing, bonny boys, bonny mad boys. Bedlam boys are bonny. They still go bare and live by the air, and want no drink nor money. My horn is made of thunder. I stole it out of heaven. The rainbow there is this I wear, from which I thence was driven. Yet will I sing, bonny boys, bonny mad boys. Bedlam boys are bonny. They all go bare and they live by the air, and they wants no drink nor money. In 1770, the free entry to the hospital was ended. Visitors then needed a pass signed by one of the hospital governors to gain access. This change was made because the public had no conscience when it came to abusing the patients, both verbally and physically. The ending of free access to the patients did not end the brutalisation. The patients were often shackled, brutalised and scorned by the staff. In the Victorian period there were moves to cure the madness. Some of the methods would be seen as primitive torture in our time. The songs that modern-day singers know as the Bedlam ballads date from the mid to late 1700s, with others rewritten in the early 1800s to provide a new song for the street song market. There are several well-known Bedlam songs from this period, and they include The Maid in Bedlam, also known as I Love My Love, Through More Fields, also known as Newgate, and Bedlam City, also known as Billy is the Lad That I Admire. The Maid in Bedlam can be traced back to the 1740s, when a broadside street song was printed named Nancy's Complaint in Bedlam. The storyline tells of a maiden's lament for her lover, often her husband, who was sent off to sea by heartless parents. She loves her love because he first loved her. The young man returns from sea and hears her lament and rescues her. In some versions, she says that if she was able to change herself into various birds, fishes and other animals, she would search for her love. An offshoot song, The Loyal Lover, is thought to have had its origins in this ballad. A version of the song was collected by Robert Burns and printed in the Scots Musical Museum in 1790. The song was still popular in the 1800s, and versions were collected by members of the Folk Song Society. My love, he was sent from me by friends that were unkind. They sent him far beyond me, all to torment my mind. Although I've suffered for his sake, contented I shall be. For I love my love, because I know he first loved me. I said, my dearest Johnny, are you my love or no? He said, my dearest Nancy, I proved your overthrow. But you have suffered for my sake, contented we shall be. For I love my love, because I know he first loved me. The tune and words for that version of The Maid in Bedlam was collected by Cecil Sharp in August 1906 from Jack Barnard of Bridgewater in Somerset. The song Bedlam City appears on broadside printings in the 1820s. The song tells of a poor woman confined to Bedlam by her cruel parents. She laments for her Billy, her love, who is abroad fighting in battle. She fears that he will be slain. Henry Burstow, a cobbler living in Horsham in Sussex, was not only a singer with a very large repertoire of songs, but was also an enthusiastic bell ringer who was instrumental in reviving the ringing of the changes into his part of Sussex. Henry Burstow dictated his life story to William Albury in the early 1900s. A book was printed in 1907 named Reminiscences of Horsham. In the book, Burstow describes the new Horsham workhouse. I've heard of 2 mad people kept there. One man named Evans, a raving maniac, who occupied a cell for 22 years and was released only by grim death. He was succeeded in the same cell by his daughter, who was there in chains also for many years. I don't know how many. She was kept, as it were, on shore to visitors, being allowed to look through the iron bars in the door, to watch her cultivating her friendship with rats of enormous size, which she used to nurse on her lap and feed from her hand. Upon the slightest noise, the rats would disappear, leaving the poor maniac convulsed with rage and uttering the most awful imprecations against the disturbers. Down by the side of Bedlam City, once I heard a maid complain, making her moans and sad lamentations. I've lost my joy, my only swain. Billy is the lad that I do admire, Billy is the lad that I do adore. Now for him his love's a-dying, for fear she'll never see him more. Don't you hear the cannons rattle? Don't you hear the trumpets sound? Billy is a-dying in the midst of battle, dying of his bleeding wound. Don't you see my Billy coming? Don't you see him in yonder cloud? Billy with the angels all around him, Billy in his bloody shroud. The tune and words for that version were collected from Mr. F. Scarlett Potter of Halford in Shipton-on-Stow in Warwickshire, and was printed in 1893 in English County Songs. Through More Fields, also known as Newgate, has a variable set of words, but the basic story tells of a young sailor passing Bedlam who hears his love, sometimes his wife, lamenting her imprisonment by her cruel parents. He bribes the gate porter to let him into the cell where she's been confined. He declares his love and takes her away from the asylum. Versions of the song were collected by the Hammond brothers, George Gardner and Lucy Broadwood. It should be acknowledged that some of the patients were placed there because they transgressed the expectations of the time. Women who dared to fall in love with someone beneath their station, unmarried pregnancies, and children who rebelled against the parental expectations. This attitude continued into the 20th century, and in some places continues in the present, often controlled by religious bodies that ought to show compassion rather than making people into outcasts. Although this podcast deals with the Bethlehem Hospital, it should be remembered that mental hospitals were quite common throughout Britain. The tales and songs and mistreatment of the patients related to Bedlam are just as relevant to these other hospitals. Modern sensitivities dislike the use of words such as asylum, lunatic, mad people, but we must accept the attitudes of the past to understand how these situations were perceived at the time. There was no attempt at understanding people who have mental problems, no psychiatrists, no counselling or any other consideration to how the patient might feel or how confused they might be in relation to what's happening around them. I will end this podcast with a version of Through More Fields, collected in 1906 by George Gardner and J. F. Geyer from Moses Blake of Lyndhurst in Hampshire. 'Twas through more fields I rambled, by myself all alone. I heard a maid in Bedlam a-making her sad moan. She was wringing of her tender hands, and a tearing of her hair, crying, "O cruel parents, you have proved to me severe. It's all through my own true love, your apprentice boy, you know. You forced him to the seas, which has proved my overthrow. This sad disconsolation, which makes me to complain, crying, oh, shall I ever see my own true love again? 'Twas early the next morning, this young sailor came ashore. He walked and he talked down longside of Bedlam door. He overheard his true love most grievously complain, I'm afraid I shall never see that young lad I love again. The sailor he looked round him and stood in surprise. Then peeping through a window, he saw her lovely eyes. He gave to the porter a large piece of gold, saying, show me to my wife, she's the joy of my soul. And when that the sailor this young damsel did see, he took her off her strawy bed, set her on his knee. Are you that young man that my father sent to see? Or are you come hither to make a fool of me? Oh yes, I am the young man that your father sent to see, and I have now returned all for the love of thee. Then if it be so, all my sorrows they are fled. Oh, I'll bid adieu to these cold chains and this strowy bed.